Hey everyone, welcome to Watch Complications. I'm Brian. Check me out on Instagram at watch_complications. Subscribe here and check out the website watchcomplications.com for all things watches. Quick wrist check before we get into today's task. I'm wearing my Rolex 114-300 dark rhodium, which goes perfectly with the dark gray t-shirt from Vario. We are going to be in the University of Horology a little bit today. We're going to take a look at a complication, well, kind of two, and how they work, the GMT and the dual time. I've got several movements. We'll look at several watches, but we're going to pop the hood on a couple of movements, quartz and mechanical, and see how these things work under the hood, and a little bit about the differences between GMT and dual time in the way they're presented on a watch face. As always, thank you to all my subscribers. So glad you're here. Everyone, comment below your thoughts on the video and others that you might watch on the Watch Complications channel. Glad to have you around and building this watch enthusiast community. At the time I'm filming this video, I'm just about at 5,000 subscribers, and I'll probably hit that in the next month or so as we get into December. So if you're looking for a fun Christmas present, I think I'm going to do a G-Shock giveaway of one I recently bought, a strap adapter kit from Vario, to see what some custom straps would look like on a G-Shock. I'll link that video up here. You can take a look at it, and you'll see more information from me on that giveaway in the near future. For now, let's open a watch case and we'll take a look at how the GMT and dual time complications work. Day of talking complications at Watch Complications. So what I want to do is give a brief overview of GMT and dual time, a little bit about the difference between them, and I'll show a variety of movements like I mentioned. I'll start with just describing the functionality of my GS GMT here, and then we're also going to look at an ETA 2893, Ronda 51524D, and CHM 3113. So this is a Swiss mechanical, we got a Swiss quartz, and we got a Chinese mechanical, and then we have this wonderful Japanese GS. All examples of GMT / dual time. What this variety of movements is going to allow me to do is take us from a more standard GMT design to a sort of a blending of GMT and dual time to a dual time. And that'll be kind of a fun way to go about it, I think. At the end of the day, the purpose of GMT and dual time watches are the same. That is to keep track of the time in multiple zones, but there are a variety of ways in which it can be implemented, and there are a variety of ways in which the hand setting works on GMT and dual time watches. We have the two terms. What's the difference between them? And I'd say there are two characteristics that help categorize watches as dual time versus GMT, although again, there is a blur between them on some watches depending on how they're designed. This is a dual time movement. We'll look at it closer in a minute, but you can see there are pins at center and at 6. These are two different times. So when you look at the watch, you have an hour and minute hand at center and an hour and minute hand at 6. A lot of times you'll have a second set of hands, or maybe one hand for the hour, and then an indicator that says whether it's AM or PM. The idea is dual time. You're looking at the watch and you can see two different times at the same time. And also dual time watches often focus on 12-hour display, 12-hour time, whereas what we call GMT watches typically have a 24-hour hand that's part of the display, the same display as the 12-hour time, and it uses a bezel of some sort. Here it's on the interior around the chapter ring, or exterior bezel that you can turn that has a 24-hour scale on it. I'll be putting pictures up as we go along to help illustrate the point in these different types of GMT displays. So the focus with the GMT is often on having a 24-hour display that goes along with it. So you don't need an AM or PM indicator as you would with 12-hour time to know whether it's morning or night. You know that by where we are on the 24-hour scale. And of course this is much more tied to the idea of GMT, Greenwich Mean Time, and having two time zones tracked, home time and GMT time. Now if you have a bezel that rotates, whether it's on the interior or exterior, both designs exist, you could keep track of a third time zone by rotating the bezel. So in short, dual time typically focuses on independent 12-hour displays on the dial face, whereas GMT often uses a 24-hour hand and bezel of some sort. So since we are talking technical details, let me show how the time is set on this 9R66 spring drive GMT from Grand Seiko. Beautiful watch, love it. I'll put the review above. This has a quick set date that can go forward and backward, which is really nice. 12-hour time and then the 24-hour hand. I have a friend in Finland, so I often have it set to Helsinki time, so it's 11 a.m. here and you can see it is about 6 p.m. there. This is actually a screw down crown on this dressy Grand Seiko, which is really nice. Gives it a little bit more protection, water wise. Not that I'm going to go swimming with it or anything, but I'm going to pull this out to first position. This is the way a lot of GMTs work, is if I have it in this first setting position, the hour hand will jump every hour. What you want to do is actually pull it out to second position, so all the way out, and then you're going to set what you might call, I don't know, home time. You can say your GMT time, but the time zone that you're wanting to track elsewhere, you will set that first, okay? And so this is, again, I wanted to say this is in Helsinki. It's 11:09 here, and so that would be about 6:09 p.m. there. So first you would set that, okay? And notice that it does have hacking. That sweeping seconds hand is stopped. Now when I push it back into the next setting position, I'll push it all the way in and then pull this back out to the first setting position, notice that the second hand is now moving. So I've set the time on my 24-hour hand. And then as I move the main hour hand around, you can see it just jumps to whatever hour I'm wanting to keep track of. This is how you also quick set the date forward and backward. So I could go back to the 12th, for example, but I'm wanting to set this to, this is 11 p.m. on the, 11 a.m. on the 13th. So I set the 12-hour time. And that's how you set this particular GMT. And a lot of them, again, work that way. You set the 24-hour time first, and then the hour hand will jump around as you get it to your 12-hour time display. So you can see that the hands do mechanically have a relationship with each other when you're in that second position, and they're both rotating at the same time. But then you can set this 12-hour hand independently. That's how some GMTs work in terms of setting. This doesn't have a rotating bezel. If it did, again, you could keep track of another time zone by putting it, in whatever direction you want, and then using that 12-hour hand, again, to indicate another time zone. So that's a quick intro to basic GMT time setting. I don't have any GMTs with a bezel right now, which is kind of odd. I have in the past. I'll throw up a picture of one I did, which was a Christopher Ward Pepsi. It was really nice. But this is my GMT that I have right now, and I love it. And yeah, I don't know if I'll get one that has a bezel on it or not. I have more dive watches with bezels that have the hour scale on them. All right, so now it's time to pop the hood open. We're going to look at each of these up close and look at how the gearing works. This is what this is about, how these things are actually implemented. It really comes to reduction gears to move from 12-hour time to 24-hour time. But it's always kind of fun, I think, to look at these. I'll put some hands on them that aren't necessarily meant to go on these watches, but just to show the movement. And let's just start taking a technical look at it. GMT and Dual Time, here we go. All right, so we're going to start with the ETA 2893-3. This is one you don't see very often. I say that because these usually have a date wheel on them, but this one does not. And I might do, in my next Q&A or chat with Brian, I might do this question as well, like what's the most abused complication? My opinion is the date. I like whenever the dates don't mess up the balance of the dial much, and again, I've already said before, I don't like Cyclops lenses that amplify the imbalance. Dates are just overdone these days, and I like GMT movement without a date even. So you can add the gearing here independently if you want to, but 2893s are pretty hard to find independently, out there just on the open market. But this one is sometimes available, and so I grab those and I can always get the other parts if I need to. So this is a really good, high quality movement and kind of the workhorse of the GMT world. So in terms of the components that we're really focused here under the hood on, you can see here at center it's called a double tooth 12-hour wheel, and that's the main 12-hour time that you'll see. Then you have the hour driving wheel right here. I'm using my tablet pen here to help point these out. Non-abrasive nib on the end of this thing. So we have our hour driving wheel, and then we have our corrector setting wheel. So this gets us over to the keyless works, so we can, of course, pull the stem out to setting position, and you can see how then this would work our way towards rotating the time at center. So this is our 12-hour time. Now what you can get separately, actually comes separately, is a 24-hour wheel. have one of those here. So you can see it's ETA 2893. The part is called 251. Focus that. See? It's nice that they already put the dial washer on there for you. So that's our 24-hour wheel. And this will slide right over the top of our 12-hour. Let's look at this a little bit closer now. You see what this does is gives a wider outer surface to put a larger hand on, and then you still have access to the hour, minute, and second hands. You can see now that the 24-hour wheel at center is in contact with the hour driving wheel. There's two layers to this. There's the sort of brass collar here underneath. There's the silver layer on top, and there's a screw in the middle there. But this lower layer is interacting with the 12-hour time, 12-hour wheel, and then the top gear, which is silver in color, is interacting with the 24-hour. And notice the size difference, right? These reduction gears are different number of teeth, different size, and those ratios get the wheels that they're in contact with spinning at different rates. Of course, 12-hour time and 24-hour time, one is a lot slower. So we've got this slower contact on top, and it's going to rotate once per day, whereas the hour wheel underneath will rotate twice per day. By the way, if you hear the loud noise in the background, those are the local F-35s flying around. Sound of freedom, right? Now, I have longer videos from time to time, and I don't want to go too long, even though people like some of the detail I go into. The behavior of this movement is much like the GS I showed. So you have your 24-hour hand and 12-hour time, both at center. But we've gotten a look at how the gearing works under the hood. So let's go ahead and look at the next movement and how it works. Okay, so what we're going to take a look at now is the Ronda 515-24D. This one's a little bit of an odd duck. It's got a sister movement, the 24H, which is what you would usually see. So this is a Swiss quartz movement. The 24H, the more common one that you'll see used, works on the same principle as the other GMTs we've already looked at, and that is it's got a 12-hour hand. This has a 12-hour wheel. They call it dual time, but this is really dual time meets GMT. It could serve as either, just one time is on a 24-hour scale. So you do have two independent times simultaneously. It's not a separate hand that's keeping track of it when you look at it visually. It's a separate wheel. It's kind of a blending of the two. This is a movement I used in my 10-6 dual time. I used a play on words and called it dual with an E as opposed to an A. And this was one of the practice dials I had when I was testing the process and the loom and stuff. You can see I've got this spacer ring that I put in the case. So I'll link a video to that, throw a picture of what this thing looked like when it was done. But yeah, this is just a test dial, so it's got some oddities about it. I'll take the dial off so you can see how the gearing and the movement actually looks under the hood and how it works. But let me pull this out to setting position. You can see I can quick set the date, but if I pull it all the way out, then I get the time setting. This movement's not in the best shape, so don't want to worry about it. See what this looks like. What I'm going to do is put a couple hands on this so you can see the relationship between the dual time wheel and the hands for the 12-hour. Right, so what I did was just real quickly put some hands on here that I don't think I'll probably use with anything, so I'm not particularly worried about them. I didn't align it perfectly at 12. Just want to show you the operation of this. And again, normally I'd be wearing COTS if these were important movements. These are just test movements and things I have sitting around the workshop. So I'm going to pull this out to first setting position, and we'll look at how these hands and the wheels interact with each other in terms of time setting for this dual time meets GMT 515-24D. So the wheel is independent, just like a 24-hour hand can be independent. But the key is, in that dual time characteristic, you're looking at them at the same time. Same concept, but it's really a blending. So here we have pulled out to first setting position, and if I turn clockwise, I get the quick set for the date. Okay? If I turn counterclockwise, I get independent movement of the 24-hour wheel. Now, if this was a true dual time, complete dual time, it would be a 12-hour wheel, and it would have an AM PM indicator perhaps somewhere on the dial to indicate morning or night. So that's what is kind of missing if this were to be kind of dual time. So that can move independently. Now, this movement has a little wonkiness about it. It's an old test movement that I had. It's got some issues, but this will at least illustrate the point. I'm going to pull this all the way out to the second position, and the minute hand will turn normally, once per hour. The hour hand here is going to turn to set the 12-hour time, but that will also turn the 24-hour time as well. So just another way to show 2 times at the same time, but this is on a 24-hour scale. So there's another one. Let's look at one more that's really dual time. Now, I don't have hands that exactly fit this movement, so I've gotten hands on there that are closer. The top 2 here are a little loose. These 2 actually fit. So there's an hour and a minute hand right on top of each other aligned, and then there's an hour and minute here. Different types. It's a Dauphine hand, and then this blue loom on top, just old hands I had. And I'll do my best to illustrate. All I need is just a little bit of a visual to show you that these are 2 independent 12-hour times, which is what you might call a true dual time as opposed to a GMT. You could set one of these. There's not an AM PM indicator though, which again you would usually have. This is an oddity also as well because it has the flywheel at 12. Usually it's at 6 or a 9 or some other location. And I pulled this out to the setting position, and all I want to really illustrate here is you'll see both of these move in sync. Might be a little off just because they're loose, but I'll do my best to show that to you. Okay, so I'm gonna put a little pressure here on the base of the blue hand, and then notice as I turn them in sync that those hands are moving at the same time. Okay, so here you've got 2 times displayed, simultaneously. Don't see too many watches with that setup. So I'm jumping just a little bit ahead here, but as you just saw, there's only one setting position. Okay, pull out the setting position, there's no other. And if I turn counterclockwise, then I get both wheels moving in the same direction. They're both on 12-hour time. You'd think, well, I can't set those independently. You can. It's by turning clockwise. And let me show you how this little trick works, and you'll see how you can independently set the hands at center from the hands at 6. So first you would set the hands at 6 on this, going counterclockwise, and then you can independently set the time at center, and then they'll stay in 12-hour rotation. And this is just illustrating the point of what a dual time truly is. It's 12-hour scale typically, and 2 independent times that can be shown. Pretty wild, right? Like windshield wipers. And I think just to have a little bit more fun, I'm going to take the top plate off of this so you can see what the gearing looks like underneath. So it's an interesting little trick in what they did with this particular movement. I don't know how many other movements do this particular approach in a dual time 12-hour display where you have 2 independent hour and minute hands, but this is at least one way to do it. So let's open up this watch a little bit. We're going to take this top plate off. There's a couple layers here. We'll go all the way down to the gears. So I've taken 5 top screws out, and I'm going to lift up this plate. This is a fairly thin layer, and just going to pull this back like so. And then we get our first look at how these hands can be set independently. You start to see the hour wheel underneath of center. We can see the other wheel. You can't see it too much under. There's a little gap in there, but you can see this little pin and hook. But notice, really close, look at that high quality finishing on this Chinese movement. Okay, anyway, good movements to mess around with. But notice there's a little cutout here in this hour wheel. Okay, you can see the spring there. Now, it is kind of a clever little solution to this particular design. But anyway, if I was turning them both counterclockwise, so both of them evenly rotating, you can see that little gap here. It is coming around. It's just about 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. Comes around, isn't going to interfere going backwards here, right? You can see it flipped over right there, okay? But if I go clockwise in time setting, it's going to catch on that little tension spring. All right, and now this time at 6 won't move. It'll be stationary. But you put enough pressure and the hour and minute at center will continue to turn. So here I'm still turning clockwise. Notice now I can set those hands independently. Okay? So it's an interesting setting mechanism for this dual time. So how about we take 3 more screws out, take this top plate off, and take even a little bit of a closer look, shall we? Okay, I removed those 3 screws, and now I'm going to lift up this whole plate in one piece. And I'm not particularly worried about fingers on this one. And you can see we have that spring comes off right along with it. It's always fun taking movements apart, and I bought this one just for this specific purpose. But notice here underneath, there we have the hour wheel kind of attached, sort of placed in this plate. And so now we can see how this thing actually works in terms of the gearing. So we got the hour wheel underneath here. Let me see if I can take that out. There's the spring. Okay, so I took that off, and now you can see there's the hour wheel. Take that out, and we'll place it back on top of the movement. There we go. And let's take another up close look at it. And now we can see how these gears operate. So we have our keyless works and time setting gearing all through here. I've talked about that and what those parts are in other videos. It's kind of a parallel design in terms of gearing. Reminds me of the Christopher Ward SH21, which has twin mainsprings, and it's a parallel construction, and it has very similar gearing between the 2 barrels for winding them. It's just parallel. See? And now there's no spring to stop this, so they would turn simultaneously either direction. But I think it's kind of a fun look at this particular dual time movement. Again, low cost, fun, easy to take apart, easy to break these sort of things too, because the materials aren't that great. So don't know if I'll ever use this movement for anything. I really bought it just so I could show this particular video. But yep, that's a dual time movement. Let's wrap things up. Like all my videos, I hope you found this experience educational. If you're interested in how other watch complications work, check out that playlist. I've also got other videos on making custom watches and dials, watch reviews, strap reviews, and all kinds of other stuff. Everything watches. So hope you stick around, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell if you want updates, look at the website, watchcomplications.com, and follow me on Instagram at watch_complications. Watch for that G-Shock giveaway in the near future. I'm Brian, this is Watch Complications. I am out.